Alright, so I would like you all to, and for those who just finished your guys' speech, I'm sorry in advance. I would like you all to imagine, as you sit at your seat, and let's just say you just finished your speech, you just managed to execute the speech for the required duration, and like most of us, and like me right now, you were nervous as heck doing it. And let's say you tried your best to relax beforehand, but you weren't successful. So now it's your turn to play as the audience, and continue, and then your turn to pay attention to the other presentations. But then let's say as you start seeing other people do it, you question your presentation in every aspect, like, did I do this right or wrong? And then you begin to get a little scared, like, okay, this person did do a good job on this, I didn't do it. Oh my gosh, this and that. And then you start overthinking it, making it all worse. And then out of nowhere, it becomes from your speech being your trouble on your mind to things that you have in problems in another life. So then you start overthinking again, and then out of the blue, you just see your vision continue to spin. You start seeing things that weren't there before. Then you start telling yourself, as you're already overthinking it too much, so what is happening? Something is wrong. This isn't normal. You keep thinking worse, and the fear is so strong that you mistake for like a headache, and then as you feel your heart pounding, you think, oh my gosh, I'm probably having a heart attack. So then to make it even worse, out of nowhere, the fear of death kicks in. You feel like you're about to die, like it's the end of the world, and you're just sitting in your seat listening to someone take a speech. And this event lasts longer than 10 minutes. After all of it, you just ask, was that a heart attack? Was I going to die actually, a seizure? Everything that I just told you happened to me in the introduction speech. I was sitting on that seat, Andreas, so you might want to be worried about that. And on that note, after that, I went to the doctor to figure what it was, and all it was just a panic attack. So on that note, today I want to define to you a psychological condition that millions and millions refer to as a panic attack. I will be speaking on the symptoms, causes, and treatments. So what I just explained really is all just one cycle. It becomes with stress, tears, and all that accumulates adrenaline. So when you start thinking of the worst, is when it all shoots up to your brain, and then your subconscious misinterprets it for you. So all that adrenaline, instead of you being conscious of you getting hyped up, it turns against you, and then you start thinking the worst. Hormones, the adrenaline, and since you're constantly, you're not in actual danger, you're just sitting down. And as you can see, your response, the fear kicks in, hormones release, and this is just a constant cycle that keeps going over, and it's just a panic attack. And this all can develop into what's called panic disorder. So if I had panic disorder, I would be afraid to come into this class, only to the fear that, I just finished speech. After this speech, I'm about to have a panic attack. And on that note, I just want to tell you guys, panic attacks are nothing that they're just really a nuisance. But what makes them have such a negative effect is the one you feel when you have one. During the duration and the symptoms, they leave mental scars on someone. Panic attacks really don't consist on just one symptom. It consists of a plethora. So it's never the same one each time. You could be feeling sweaty, your heart hurts, or you could just be feeling all numb, and then you get a major headache. And the experience is different for each person. One most common fear symptom, according to Women Deep by Katz, a author for them, of fear that you are losing control, going insane, or about to die. And this is only just one symptom out of approximately 10. So for others, during an attack, other serious symptoms are vision change, numbness, and temperature change. According to Melinda Smith and Jane Siegel of HealthGuide.org, panic attacks develop abruptly, usually reach their peak within 10 minutes. Most panic attacks end within 20 to 30 minutes, and they rarely last more than an hour. But now you question, well, what causes a panic attack to occur? Well, little is actually known about the exact causes, because due to that it differs per person. One common cause theory is that they can be genetic. It can be traced down between your family tree. So actually, since I had one, it could be possible that my parents or someone before have had one. Another is substance abuse, so obviously the drug does specific damage in some specific areas of the brain depending on the drug. WebMD states, again, CAT states, the most common factor is major life stress, stressful events and major life transitions. Such stress can release big amounts of adrenaline and blood to the brain, causing it to reach a certain reaction, and it often starts but this, most common people when they start developing panic disorder and attacks is in the late adolescence, early adulthood, so I'm in that specific range. It is twice as common in women than men. Now that I told you the symptoms and causes of panic attacks, let's take a look at what can be done to help and prevent panic attacks from recurring. Since panic attacks are a mental event, most common but drastic is therapy, where they just teach you, they teach the person, according to National Institution of Health, they teach person different ways of thinking, behaving, and also reacting to certain situations that help him or her feel less anxious and fearful. So if I had the panic attack or panic disorder, and I kept having constant fear of having it and to develop speech, deliver speech, and I would have to go and they would teach me different ways of how to handle, how to react, or how to be during that speech. But this should only be taken if panic attacks occur frequent and severe, such as panic disorder. Another method is through medications such as anti-anxiety medications and antidepressants like Xanax. But the problem with that is that you can become addicted to the medication. And also, they have other side effects. And the problem with antidepressants is that you can become suicidal and have suicidal thoughts and attempts. But the most helpful thing is for you to succumb to it and admit that you have a problem and just face it constantly. Lastly, to conclude, today I've talked about the symptoms of panic attacks, their causes and treatments. So if you ever have to be in the same position, don't worry, you're fine. It's gonna be okay. Just relax. And nothing serious, it's just a nuisance, it's just an annoyance. It happens to most of us. But if it becomes worse and you can't control it, you can get help. And through family helping you, or physical, like doctors and stuff like that. Yeah.
Matthew, what did you think?
I really thought that his attention grabber was really good. Thought he related really well to the rest of the class because it was about speech giving and discuss about speech giving. I also thought that his transitions are really good. They're really smooth, and it wasn't awkward or abrupt. And the only thing I would improvement I would say was maybe a little bit reliant on your script, but you kind of made up for that with really good eye contact. And you had a lot of good points in your visual. Yeah, it was only one, but it's very informative, and I thought it was pretty good and appropriate for your topic. And overall, I thought it was a really good speech.
Okay. Well, let me start with the visual, since you had just the one visual up there, and this will be pretty easy to talk about. I like the idea of the visual. It's not as clear as it needs to be. There's too much in the one visual all at one time. So this would be one of those things where if we're reading it and we're looking at it, well, we can go over that and think about it, but you're talking about it while we're looking at it, and it doesn't always mesh with what you're talking about. This would be one of those places where if you created this and you added each section as you went through the process, it would be so much easier for the audience to follow along and not jump ahead and be thinking about what's coming and not keep looking back at the things that have gone on in the past. I think you needed a little bit more control of it. Also, it's sitting in the background the whole time you speak, and you really only use it in the first third of the presentation, and then it's there the rest of the time, so it's like a wallpaper, and if we ever get distracted, people are going to go there and start reading that instead of paying attention to you. And you could probably get it off the screen pretty easily, just to hit that mute button, or if you had some other visuals, maybe illustrate the point with a couple of lists. For example, I did think that you got to a point where there were some symptoms and you talked about what some of the causes were, and I think that might have been a good place for a list, some of those things that the doctors provided. You did have source citations in the presentation in 2 or 3 places, and I thought that that was helpful. That adds a lot of credibility to your material. You defined the subject very clearly, so I appreciated that. I think that that worked really well. And I think everybody in the audience can kind of relate because of the experience that you used to introduce us and the way you talk to us about it. I like that a lot. I did think that the introduction, the attention device, goes on a little long. It's 2 minutes before you actually get to the phrase panic attack. So when you watch it back, I know you're building and there's this idea that there's going to be a reveal and it's going to be, but I think it needs to go a little bit quicker, and it feels kind of sluggish instead of feeling personal and involving. It just feels a little lethargic. So you need to have a little bit more energy as you get to it and get to the punch there quicker, and I think that that would help. The organizational stuff, I think that you did a good job organizing the material. It was easy to follow. I didn't think that the transitions on the first couple of points were as clear as they ought to be. It did sometimes feel like you just moved to the next information before we'd really summarize it. However, I did think that your transition to the third point was really clear. You had a nice internal summary of the first and second points, and you went to that third point, and I knew exactly where we were at that point in the speech. I just think that you want to be consistent about doing that earlier in the speech too. The delivery issues, I did think that your eye contact was pretty good for the most part. It seems strange to me that you had so many notes. You had the big piece of paper and then some other little bits of piece of information that you're using, and you only go to them occasionally, and mostly you're talking to us, and I thought that that was great. But when you do go to those things, boy, do you read. You go to them and you're reading them very thoroughly, and it does take us a little bit out because you get to that. And I think you want to be doing the reading only when you get to the stats or the quotes, that sort of thing. And it felt like that wasn't always the case. Even though, like I said, most of the time you did talk to us, it did take us out a little bit. All right, thank you. Hopefully no panic.